Professor Roslyn Gleadow studies plants that kill. She's a world leader in the research field of cyanogenesis, the process by which plants release cyanide.
About 10% of all plants make cyanogenic glucosides, but when you go to crop plants, it's at least 30%, if not 50% of plants make these compounds, which make them really interesting because somehow humans have had this love affair with plants that make toxic cyanide.
A love affair that Professor Gleadow and her team began exploring with two highly toxic but widely eaten crop plants, cassava and sorghum. While the sorghum grain is safe to eat, its leaves contain dangerous levels of cyanide, and cassava roots can cause death and paralysis if not properly processed.
What was the big surprise, both with sorghum and to some extent with cassava, is the plants that are less toxic don't actually grow as fast when they're young as the plants that are toxic.
At the time, it was thought that toxicity was a defense mechanism against herbivores, but their findings suggested something more nuanced was at play. They discovered that more toxic varieties, such as the bitter cassava, tend to be better at tolerating environmental stresses such as drought. And importantly, when under stress, these plants seem to store the nitrogen that's usually used for growth and photosynthesis inside their cyanogenic compounds.
There's no point in putting any resources they have into photosynthesis because they're not going to be able to grow anyway. Why not store it as something toxic so the animals won't eat you? And then as soon as there's some rain, they can remobilise that and then grow.
This efficient management of nitrogen means these plants tend to grow better. But climate change has thrown a spanner in the works. Professor Gleadow says the effects of global warming could make the crops of the future more toxic and less nutritious. That has huge implications for food security.
You've got decreased protein in the grain, which means that people who rely on grain for their protein are going to need to eat more grain. The cattle that rely on grass for eating are going to need to eat more grass to satisfy their protein level. So that's from the direct effect of carbon dioxide. Then if we have drought and heat effects, we're going to have reduced plant production. It's not a happy story.
Professor Gledow's own academic story has been a rather unconventional one. After doing her master's, she worked in various roles, including as an educator, before starting her PhD at 39.
I thought, well, if I'm going to stick around a university, I absolutely have to have a PhD, right? It's just a ticket. What I didn't realise is that I absolutely adored research, totally adored it, and just loved what doing a PhD did to my brain in sharpening up my thinking.
She now joins her husband, Professor Andy Gleadow, as a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Science and hopes her journey can inspire others.
The fact that I can have this amazing honour and yet have come through a rather unorthodox pathway is, I hope, an encouragement to people who, for various reasons, no matter what their background, have a different route that they've taken.